Hello and welcome to my podcast. My name is Melissa Snow. Today we're going to be talking about the truth behind the first Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving has become an important institution in America, from roasted turkeys and pumpkin pie and arguments across the dinner table. You are out of touch aunt and always popular 30 naps. Nothing says you're thankful for the homegrown holiday. In fact, Thanksgiving is more than just a holiday. It's a piece of American history, started by the Pilgrims and their arrival in the New World, and held to celebrate both their first year of independence of England and the Anglican Church, as well as the relationships that had built with their new friends, the WAMPANOAG. I'm sorry, I do not know how to say that. Or so you thought. Despite the reality of American history being such more complicated, especially when it comes to relations, if you can call them that, the native people who occupied the land before we moved in uninvited, there was an even larger microscopion about the original of Thanksgiving. Regardless of what we have learned from elementary school, teaching, televisions, and maybe even if out of touch aunt, and there another story that predates the Pilgrims of the New World, and that goes decades further back, and the Spanish explorer the true European settlements in American St. Augustus. Before the Pilgrims, many think of the Pilgrims as being the first Europeans to build the community of the North American soil, and that is far from the truth. One of the arrivals on 1620, another colony of American, was already 50 years old and thriving many miles south along what is known Florida eastern coastline. The colony of St. Augustine, founded in 1565 by Spanish Admiral Pedro Mendez, sorry, I do not know how to say that, de Alaves, it has been occupied ever since, even despite changing hands between the Spanish and British several times before. Florida and acquired by the U.S. in 1819, making it the first for the oldest constitutionally occupied European settlements in America. In fact, in St. Augustus, in the city of the first on the city government for schools, first hospitals, first plan, first parish church, and even the first mission to the native populations. When it comes to the first European influence, the Americans and ancient city has all the base covered. But what about Thanksgiving? There is no arguments that the Spanish settlers, St. Augustine, predated the Pilgrims in New England, but Thanksgiving is about more than just who got there first. It is about coming together with the people you care about, making new friends, and celebrating everything you can to be thankful for. We all know that the Pilgrims' first Thanksgiving played out. We've been seeing it time and time again, but about the Spanish and St. Augustine, could they have had the real Thanksgiving or the real first Thanksgiving? Turns out they did long before the Pilgrims plucked their first turkey. The Spanish colonized in St. Augustine were celebrated how thankful and they were to be alive and healthy in the New World. In fact, this celebration was held in from the Catholic Mass, followed by the giant feast was not different from the notorious meal, the Pilgrims on the Map. Mass of Thanksgiving. When Mendez de Alves and 800 Spanish settlers first came to a shore in 1565, they had a lot to celebrate. Not only had the surviving the long voyage, which was accomplished in those days, but there were also coming ashore during the native and blessing Virginia Mary, and very important day according to the church calendar. The landing party led by St. Augustine, first pastor, Father Francisco Lopez de Mendez Garajales, came together and celebrated the traditional feast day and a massive Thanksgiving and religious ceremony that would have looked familiar to the Spanish Catholic Mass we held today. It wasn't until after the ceremony that the real Thanksgiving would commence of Mendez Alves not only laid out the great feast for both of his men and settlers, but also for the Ticum native tribe who had traded with them in the past and had met upon their arrival. The meals would have looked much different than the traditional turkey and stuffing we know today. Would have likely been made up as the same food as the settlers had enjoying on their voyage. This includes hard sea biscuits, red wine, hearty stew made from salted pork, and garbanzo beans known as cocido, C-O-C-I-D-O. If the traditional Thanksgiving options had been available, it would have had to have been brought by the Tucumã, who not only had access to turkey, but to other staples as maize, corn, beans, and squash. However, it is not documented whether or not they were part of the meal preparation. They did, on the other hand, participate of Mass. What exactly Ticumã must have taught of the foreigners' religion ceremonies is not known, but in his journals, Father Lopez noticed that the Indians imitated all the saws done, likely in the attempt of intonate. Of course, from the Spanish perspective, the communications with the Tucumã, I'm hoping I'm saying that right, Timucua, Timucua, would have been little more than the first steps of the aggressive Christian conversation strategy, but similarities between the peace offering and the pilgrims breaking bread with the Wampanoag, Wamponoag in Plymouth cannot be ignored. This, coupled with all of the other similarities, still leaves most of us with questions. Why isn't Thanksgiving's feast in St. Augustine recognized as Americans first? Despite the events being well documented and the irony of Catholic Mass being the true inspiration for the Thanksgiving holiday and not the famous feast of Puritan pilgrims, P-U-I-T-A-N pilgrims, who were notorious anti-Catholic, and most of the history has even led into a great deal of controversy. It is only recently, thanks to the hard work of a few historians in Florida, that the real history has finally made it into the mainstream. Now other historians have started to back the claim that St. Augustus and not Plymouth is the true source of American tradition. However, tradition is tradition, and the story of the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag has become so closely entwined with the holiday is folklore. The historical occurrence has taken a backseat to time-honored festivals and beloved culture modifies. Today, the only memory of the real first Thanksgiving is marked by 200-foot cross at the mission of Nobre Dios small church and that sits at the original landing site of the settlers, just 300 yards north of the famously haunted Castillo de San Marcos. Was the rest of the city's sordid history and engineered for the most of 3 centuries. So that church is haunted. Haunted memories with such as long as complicated past, there was no shortage of restless spirits in St. Augustine. For haunted hotel in the Prairie poltergeist, and perhaps everything in between, there is not a square inch of ancient city that doesn't hold some vestige of people and came before us. Considering so many haunted histories, and would be hard to believe that some vesting in the first Thanksgiving had been left behind, even attached itself to one of the many locations they're still tied to the holiday roots. Well, maybe it has. The settlers themselves that participated in the first Thanksgiving may not haunt the city, but the descendants of the Tucumã who once greeted them in peace certainly do, despite friendly relationships during the first Mass of Thanksgiving, and it was long before the Spanish relationship in the history of the Timucua began to soar. Sorry if I cannot pronounce that right. I'm so sorry. Proof of the fragile relationship stands today of the forms of the Castello and San Marcos, which was not only built from the labor of the Timucua, from the labors of the Timucua, but at one point several as the interment prison for those who had not considered to Spanish rule. Not just a Timucua either, but Seminole, Apache, many others as well. Sorry, I cannot say some of these tribal names because I'm not Native American. I am an Irish girl. So I don't know how to say it. Because of this, many Native lives were lost in the Castello, and lasting remember of how the first Thanksgiving as well, the values of tried represent quickly disintegrated. The values and tried to resent quickly and disintegrated. The theme that would unfortunately play out again 1,000 miles north in Pilgrims in New England. Of Native American spirits that are left behind, a grim reminder of many tribes' disintegrations. disinterrogations of the hands of plague wars in Spanish, and most well-known linger in the Castello San Marcos itself. Only a few hundred years from the first Thanksgiving, there was a spirit of a Native American men call out for the jail cells and torture chambers of old. Some of the speak of the ceremonial chief known as OSCE OLAS, who wanders the grounds and at night, and he even been jumping from the ramparts, perhaps still hoping for freedom. It goes to show that while St. Augustine may have been the home of a real Thanksgiving, it came out a cost of one that was still paying for to this day. So whether it was the Pilgrims, Plymouth, or Spanish in St. Augusta or Augustine, what important is understanding the truth behind the complicated holiday. You know, it's not just that, it's what they did when they got here, what they made the Native American indigenous people do, and they took over a lot of the land. And I'm not sure exactly the whole story on it, but I know that they had a war, and I know it was more than what I just read. But that is the end of my story, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Until next time, stay safe and have a great Thanksgiving, and I will see you again. But I will probably be doing a couple of different stories. These ones are kind of like spooky Thanksgiving stories and things that I can find in November about Thanksgiving. Some of them are just like stories that about people's families and stuff. But yeah, all right, that's the end of my story, and I hope everybody has a great day. Thanks for watching. Peace out, everyone. Bye.